Ethan found the blood trail at midnight. He'd gone outside to check the perimeter, old habits from his ranger days, when his flashlight caught something dark smeared across the fresh snow. Not animal blood. He'd seen enough of that to know the difference. This was something else. The trail led to his door. He raised his rifle, heart pounding, and followed the crimson path. It ended at his porch, where 3 sets of small handprints were pressed into the wood. Child-sized, desperate, and still warm. Then he heard it. A woman's voice, barely audible over the wind. "Please. They're dying." Ethan spun toward the sound. She was collapsed against the side of his cabin, half buried in snow. Alien. Her lavender skin had turned gray-blue from cold, and blood, bright purple blood, leaked from a wound in her side. But what made his breath catch were the children. 3 of them. Small bodies clinging to her like they'd been frozen there. Different species, all of them. One had skin like ash. Another had scales along their arms. The smallest couldn't have been more than 4 years old, wrapped in a rag that did nothing against the killing cold. The woman's eyes found his. "I know what you are. Human. Ranger. You've seen death before." Her voice was fading. "Don't let them become it." She went limp. The children didn't move. Didn't cry. Just stared at him with hollow eyes that had already seen too much. Ethan made his decision in half a heartbeat. Inside. Now. He scooped up the woman, lighter than she should have been, like starvation had hollowed her out, and kicked open his door. The children stumbled after him, leaving small bloody footprints on his floor. He laid her on the sofa and grabbed his medkit. The wound in her side was deep, jagged. Something had torn through her, and recently. The blood was still flowing. "Mama's sleeping," the smallest child whispered. "She said she'd wake up soon." "She will," Ethan lied, pressing gauze against the wound. "But I need you all to sit by the fire. Right now." The oldest child, the one with ash-gray skin, positioned themselves between Ethan and the younger 2. Protective. "If you hurt her, I'll kill you." The child couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds, and was shaking from cold and fear. But Ethan recognized the look in their eyes. He'd seen it in mirrors after his wife and daughter died. The look of someone with nothing left to lose. "I'm trying to save her," Ethan said, packing the wound. "But I need you to trust me." "We don't trust anyone." "Then trust this." He met the child's eyes. "If I wanted you dead, I'd have left you outside." The logic cut through fear. The child's shoulders dropped slightly. Ethan worked fast. The woman had lost a lot of blood. Too much. His hands, steady from years of field medicine on injured animals, moved through the familiar motions. Clean the wound. Pack it. Pressure. Monitor breathing. She wasn't breathing right. He checked her airway. Clear. Checked her pulse. Weak and irregular. Her lips were turning blue. Damn it. He started chest compressions. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. The children watched in silence. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. Then she gasped. Her eyes flew open, wild and disoriented. She tried to sit up. Ethan held her down gently. "Easy. You're hurt. Don't move." She ignored him, head whipping toward the children. "Are they?" "They're fine. By the fire." Only then did she stop fighting. She collapsed back, tears sliding down her temples. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you. Who did this to you?" She closed her eyes. "Hunters." "What kind?" "The kind that get paid to bring us back. Dead or alive." Her hand gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "They're still out there. They're coming." Ethan looked toward the window. The blizzard had intensified. Nothing was moving out there now. But when the storm cleared, "How long do we have?" "I don't know. Hours. Maybe less." She coughed, and purple blood flecked her lips. "You should turn us in. There's a bounty." "Enough to." "How much?" She blinked, surprised by the question. 50,000 credits. More if we're alive." Ethan finished bandaging her wound. "What are your names?" "What?" "Your names. If I'm going to protect you, I should know what to call you." She stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't understand. "You're going to protect us?" "Lady, you're bleeding on my couch, and there are 3 terrified kids in my cabin." "Yeah, I'm going to protect you." "Why?" "Because that's what you do when someone knocks on your door dying." Tears came again, harder this time. "I'm Kess. The children are Tess, Rin, and Pip." "Ethan Mitchell." He finished tying off the bandage. "And you're not dying in my cabin." "Understood." She almost smiled. "Understood." He turned to the children. They were still huddled together, shaking. Not just from cold. From fear, exhaustion, trauma. You three. When did you last eat? The oldest, Tess, spoke. 4 days. 4 days. Jesus. Ethan moved to his pantry and started pulling out supplies. Dried meat. Preserved vegetables. Flour. He had enough for maybe a week if he rationed carefully. After that, he'd figure it out after that. He made broth first. Simple, warm, easy on empty stomachs. While it cooked, he grabbed blankets and wrapped each child individually, talking softly as he worked. I'm going to feed you. Then you're going to sleep. And when you wake up, we'll figure out what comes next. The hunters, Tess said. When they come. If they come, I'll handle it. You don't know what they're like. Ethan checked his rifle. Made sure it was loaded. And they don't know what I'm like. He served the broth in tin cups. The children took them with shaking hands and drank like they'd never tasted anything so good. He refilled the cups. And again. And again. On the sofa, Kess watched through half-closed eyes. Why are you doing this? Because you asked. No one helps people like us. We're criminals. Fugitives. The law says. I don't care what the law says. Ethan's voice was hard. 3 kids showed up at my door freezing and starving. That's all I need to know. She studied his face. You're going to regret this. Maybe. But I'd regret the alternative more. Outside, the wind screamed against the cabin. The blizzard had swallowed the world. Nothing was getting through that storm. Not tonight. But Ethan knew what Kess knew. When the storm cleared, the hunters would come. He looked at the woman bleeding on his sofa. At the 3 children finally starting to relax as warmth and food worked their magic. At the small, fragile piece he'd somehow become responsible for protecting. 50,000 credits. That's what they were worth to the people hunting them. But as he watched Pip fall asleep against Rin's shoulder, as Tess finally lowered their guard enough to close their eyes, as Kess's breathing evened out into something that might become healing, Ethan knew exactly what they were worth to him. Everything. He checked his rifle one more time, made sure the ammunition was accessible, and settled into his chair by the door. The storm would end eventually, and when it did, he'd be ready. Blood soaked through the bandages by morning. Ethan woke to Kess's labored breathing and knew immediately something was wrong. The wound had reopened during the night. She tried to hide it, pressing a blanket against her side, but the purple stain spreading across the fabric told him everything. How bad? He asked, already moving toward her. I'm fine. You're bleeding through the bandages. That's not fine. The children were still asleep, mercifully. He didn't want them to see this. Ethan peeled back the dressing and swore under his breath. The wound was worse than he'd thought. Whatever had hit her had torn deep, and the edges weren't closing properly. Alien physiology. He didn't know if it was supposed to look like this, or if infection was already setting in. I need to restitch this, he said. Kess's jaw tightened. Do it. He grabbed his field surgery kit, the one he used on injured wildlife, and sterilized a needle over a candle flame. No anesthetic. He didn't have anything that wouldn't kill her faster than the wound. This is going to hurt, he warned. Everything hurts. She gripped the sofa's arm. Just do it fast. He did. His hands were steady, even though his stomach turned at the sound she made when the needle went through. She didn't scream. Didn't even cry out. Just bit down on a leather strap he'd given her and endured. 15 stitches. By the end, sweat had plastered her hair to her forehead, and her skin had gone dangerously pale. Done, Ethan said, tying off the thread. She released the strap, gasping. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If infection sets in. I know. Her eyes met his. But at least I'll die inside. Warm. That's more than I expected. You're not dying. You don't know that. I know I'm not letting you. He cleaned his tools and put them away. Not after going through all that trouble to save you. She watched him move around the cabin with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're different than I expected. What did you expect? Humans have a reputation. Brutal. Selfish. The stories say. Stories say a lot of things. He hung the leather strap on a hook. Doesn't make them true. A small sound made them both turn. Pip had woken up and was staring at Kess with huge, terrified eyes. Mama? The child's voice was tiny. Kess forced a smile. I'm okay, little one. Just a scratch. Pip didn't look convinced but crawled closer anyway, curling up against Kess's uninjured side. The other children woke soon after. Tess immediately assessed the situation. Fresh bandages, Kess's pale face, the bloody cloth in Ethan's hand. Is she dying? Tess asked bluntly. No, Ethan said. You're lying. I'm not. But she needs rest and proper care. Can you three keep quiet for a while? Let her sleep. Rin nodded. Pip was already half asleep again. But Tess kept staring at him. Why are you helping us? Not the first time someone had asked. Probably wouldn't be the last. Because you need help. That's not a reason. People need help all the time. Most get ignored. Smart kid. Too smart for someone so young. Ethan sat down in his chair, suddenly tired. You're right. Most people do get ignored. I used to be one of them. What changed? I stopped ignoring. Tess frowned. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He looked at the child directly. 2 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter. Car went off a mountain road during a storm. I was supposed to be with them, but I stayed late at work instead. The cabin was silent except for the crackling fire. After they died, people helped me. Brought food. Checked in. Kept me from following them. He swallowed hard. I didn't understand why they bothered. I was nobody to them. Just another grieving person in a world full of grief. Why did they help? Because they could. Because it was right. Because. He paused. Because sometimes helping someone else is the only thing that makes you feel human again. Tess was quiet for a long time. Then, we're not human. No. But I am. And I need to remember what that means. The child seemed to consider this. Finally, they nodded and went to sit with their siblings. Ethan watched them huddle together. 3 orphans from 3 different worlds, held together by a woman who'd risked everything to save them. A woman who was now fighting for her life on his couch. Outside, the blizzard continued. He checked the window. Still couldn't see more than 5 feet. The storm had them trapped, which meant the hunters were trapped too. For now, he rationed out breakfast, more broth, some dried fruit. The children ate slowly this time, not desperate anymore. That was progress. Kess slept through most of the day, waking only to drink water when Ethan forced it on her. Her fever spiked in the afternoon. He spent hours keeping her cool with damp cloths, monitoring her breathing. She's getting worse, Tess observed that evening. I know. Will she survive? Ethan wanted to say yes. Wanted to promise. But he'd learned long ago that promises you couldn't keep were worse than silence. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm going to do everything I can. That night, Kess's fever broke in violence. She thrashed, delirious, speaking in a language Ethan didn't understand. The children woke in terror. Pip started crying. Rin pressed against the wall. Tess stood frozen, watching their mother figure fight invisible demons. Ethan held Kess down gently but firmly, keeping her from tearing her stitches. Kess, you're safe. You're in the cabin. The children are fine. She didn't hear him. Kess. He tried again, louder. Her eyes opened but didn't focus. She said something in her language. Then in broken standard, don't hurt them. Please. Take me. Just don't hurt them. No one's hurting anyone, Ethan said firmly. You're safe. All of you. Slowly, recognition crept back into her eyes. She saw him. Saw the cabin. Saw the children watching. They're okay, she whispered. They're fine. She started crying. Not quiet tears this time. Broken, exhausted sobs that shook her whole body. Ethan didn't know what else to do, so he just stayed there, one hand on her shoulder, until the storm passed. Inside and out. The fever broke on the 4th day. Ethan woke slumped in his chair, neck stiff, to find Kess watching him. Really watching, not the delirious half-awareness she'd had during the worst of it. Her eyes were clear. You look terrible, she said, her voice raspy but steady. You're one to talk. He stood, joints protesting, and checked her forehead. Cool. The fever was gone. How do you feel? Like I was gutted and put back together wrong. She tried to sit up and winced. But alive. That's more than I expected. The wound's closing. No infection. He changed her bandages with practiced efficiency. You got lucky. Lucky. She laughed bitterly. I've been called many things. Lucky isn't one of them. The children were still asleep by the fire, tangled together like puppies. They'd barely left Kess's side during her worst days, keeping vigil in their own way. They love you, Ethan observed. I'm all they have. That's not the same thing. Kess looked at the children, and her expression softened in a way Ethan hadn't seen before. I found Tess in a factory. They were 8, working 18-hour shifts sorting scrap metal. When I asked if they wanted to leave, they said yes before I finished the sentence. She paused, gathering strength to continue. Rin was at a market, caged, being sold for experiments. The vendor was listing their qualities like they were livestock. I had just enough credits to buy them. And Pip? Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I found Pip in an alley behind a restaurant. Someone had left them with the trash. They were maybe 3 years old. Still breathing, but barely. Ethan's hands stilled on the bandage. What kind of monster? The kind that sees some species as disposable. Kess's eyes hardened. Pip's species is considered vermin in some sectors. Killing them isn't even illegal. The casual cruelty of it hit Ethan like a fist. He'd seen plenty of darkness in his years as a ranger, poachers, abusers, people who treated animals like objects. But this was different. This was systematic. How long have you been running? 2 years. Maybe longer. Time blurs when you're always moving. She looked down at her hands. I knew what I was doing when I took them. Knew I'd be marked as a thief. But I couldn't walk away. You did the right thing. The right thing got me stabbed and nearly killed. Got 3 children dragged through snow and ice. Got us hunted like animals. She met his eyes. Tell me how that's right. Because they're alive. Because they're safe. Because someone finally chose them. Ethan finished tying off the bandage. That's worth everything else. Kess studied him for a long moment. You really believe that? Yes. Even knowing what it costs? Especially knowing what it costs. She opened her mouth to respond, but Tess stirred by the fire. The child sat up, saw Kess awake and alert, and their whole face transformed with relief. You're better, Tess breathed, scrambling over. I'm better, Kess confirmed, pulling the child into a careful hug. Thanks to Ethan. Tess looked at him, something complicated in their expression. Thank you for not letting her die. You're welcome. The other children woke soon after. Pip cried with joy, climbing onto the couch despite Ethan's warnings about the wound. Rin pressed their scaled hand against Kess's cheek like they were confirming she was real. Watching them, Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked tight since the day his wife and daughter died. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed, to matter to someone beyond just existing. Later, after the children had eaten and gone back to playing quietly by the fire, Kess spoke again. The storm will end soon. Ethan glanced toward the window. The wind had lessened overnight. The sky was starting to clear. Day or two probably. Then the hunters will come. Let them. You can't fight them alone. I won't be alone. He checked his rifle, a habit now. I know these mountains. They don't. There could be a dozen of them. Maybe more. Then I'll even the odds before they get close. Kess shook her head. You'd kill for us? The question hung in the air. Ethan had killed before. Mercy kills on suffering animals. One justified shooting of a poacher who'd threatened him. But this was different. This was premeditated. Defensive, yes, but still a choice. If it comes to that, he said quietly. Yes. Why? Because you knocked on my door. Because those children deserve a chance. Because, he stopped, searching for words. Because if I let them take you without fighting, I might as well have left you in the snow to die. Most people would choose differently. I'm not most people. How many times do I have to prove that? She smiled faintly. At least once more, I think. That afternoon, Ethan began preparing. He knew the terrain around his cabin intimately. Every approach, every sight line, every choke point. If hunters came, they'd have to funnel through predictable routes. He set snares on the trails. Not lethal, just enough to slow someone down and make noise. He marked trees near the cabin for clear shooting lanes. He rationed his ammunition, making sure he had enough for a prolonged engagement. Tess watched him work. You're planning for war. I'm planning to survive. It's not your fight. Ethan looked at the child directly. It became my fight the moment I opened that door. You could still turn us in. Collect the bounty. No one would blame you. I would blame me. That's enough. Tess was quiet for a moment. Then, if they come, if something happens to you, what should we do? Ethan knelt down to their level. There's a cave system about 2 miles north. Follow the creek bed. I've marked the entrance with 3 stones stacked together. Inside, there's supplies. Food, water, blankets. Enough for a week. You planned an escape route. I planned for every possibility. He put a hand on Tess's shoulder. But I'm not planning to lose. That night, he taught the children what to do if shooting started. Where to hide. How to stay quiet. How to run if he told them to run. Kess watched from the couch, her expression unreadable. Later, when the children were asleep, she spoke. You've done more for us in a week than anyone has in our whole lives. I've done what anyone should do. But they don't. She struggled to sit up fully. That's the point. They don't. And you have. Why? Ethan thought about his wife, about his daughter, about the empty house he'd left behind, and the 2 years he'd spent trying to outrun grief. Because I failed the people I loved before, he said quietly. I wasn't there when they needed me, and I can't fix that. Can't take it back. But I can be here now. For you. For them. We're not your family. No. But you could be. The words hung between them. Kess's eyes widened slightly. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I'm just saying, you don't have to keep running. Not anymore. They'll never stop looking for us. Then we make them stop. Together. Kess was silent for a long time. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear, I'll think about it. It was the closest thing to hope either of them had felt in years. Outside, the storm's last winds died away. And in the distance, someone began moving through the snow.
Ethan saw them at first light. 3 figures moving through the trees about half a mile out. They were trying to be stealthy, but fresh snow made that impossible. Every step left a clear print. Every disturbed branch showered powder. He counted the group through his binoculars. 3 visible. Likely more hanging back. They're here, he said quietly. Kess went rigid on the couch. The children, eating breakfast, froze. How many? Kess asked. 3 that I can see. There'll be more. They hunt in packs. Her voice was tight. Standard tactic is scouts first, then the main force. Ethan lowered the binoculars. Everyone to the back room. Now. We should run, Tess said, already moving toward their packs. No time. They're too close. He checked his rifle. We hold here. You can't fight them all, Kess protested. Watch me. He positioned the children in the cabin's reinforced back room, originally a root cellar, now their safest option. Kess refused to stay with them, insisting she could still shoot despite her injury. You can barely stand, Ethan argued. I can sit and aim just fine. She grabbed the spare rifle from above the fireplace. I'm not hiding while you die protecting us. There wasn't time to argue. The hunters were closing fast. Ethan took position by the front window. Kess settled behind an overturned table near the door. Not ideal cover, but better than nothing. Whatever happens, Ethan said, keep the children safe. Whatever happens, Kess replied, don't die for us. Not planning on it. The first hunter emerged from the tree line. Tall, heavily armed, wearing armor that looked military grade. They scanned the cabin through a scope, then gestured to someone behind them. 2 more appeared. Then another. Then 3 more after that. 7 total. Damn, Ethan muttered. The hunters formed up, clearly preparing to assault the cabin. Their leader, the tall one, activated some kind of communication device. Ethan couldn't hear what was said, but the body language was clear. They knew their targets were inside. Attention in the cabin. A voice boomed, amplified somehow. We know you're harboring fugitives. Send them out, and you won't be harmed. Ethan didn't respond. You have 5 minutes to comply. After that, we come in, and we won't be gentle. Kess's hands tightened on her rifle. You should give us up. Not happening. Ethan. I said no. The 5 minutes crawled by. Ethan used the time to study their positions, their gear, their formation. Professional. Organized. But overconfident. They expected an easy capture, not a fight. That would be their first mistake. When the time was up, the leader gestured. 4 hunters began advancing on the cabin. The other 3 held back, covering. Ethan waited until they were 30 feet out. Then he fired. The lead hunter went down, clutching their leg. Not a kill shot. Ethan wasn't ready to cross that line yet, but enough to take them out of the fight. The others scattered, returning fire. Bullets punched through the cabin walls, sending splinters flying. Ethan dropped below the window, counted to 3, popped up and fired again. Another hunter down. Kess fired from her position, her shots wild but forcing the hunters to keep their heads down. They're flanking left, she called out. Ethan shifted position, caught movement through a side window, and fired. Mississippi fired again. The hunter yelped and retreated. For several minutes, it was chaos. Gunfire. Shouting. The smell of powder and blood. Then silence. Ethan risked a look. The hunters had pulled back to the tree line. 2 were down, wounded but alive. The others were regrouping. "They're calling for backup," Kess said, her face pale from pain and exertion. "How long? If they have air support? Minutes." Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't hold against air support. Couldn't protect the children if they brought in heavy weapons. "Plan B," he said. "What's Plan B?" "We run." He moved to the back room. The children were huddled together, terrified but unharmed. "We're leaving," he said.
"Right now."
"Tess, grab your pack. Rin, help Pip. Move." They scrambled to obey. Ethan helped Kess to her feet. She bit back a gasp as the movement pulled her stitches. "Can you walk?" "I'll have to." He grabbed emergency supplies, food, water, medical kit, ammunition. Everything else stayed behind. They slipped out the back door while the hunters were still regrouping. Ethan led them into the woods, following a route he'd scouted years ago. A game trail that wound through dense forest where air support would be useless. Behind them, he heard shouts as the hunters realized their prey was escaping. "Faster," he urged. Kess stumbled. Ethan caught her, took more of her weight. "Leave me," she gasped. "Not a chance." They pushed deeper into the wilderness. The children moved surprisingly well, their small size an advantage in the thick undergrowth. Tess led Pip and Rin with the confidence of someone used to survival. Gunfire echoed behind them.
"Close."
"Too close." "The cave," Ethan said. "We make for the cave." They ran. The cave entrance was exactly where Ethan remembered, hidden behind a waterfall that had frozen into a curtain of ice. He discovered it years ago while tracking an injured elk and had kept it secret ever since. Now it might save their lives. "Through here," he said, helping Kess climb over the icy rocks. The children scrambled through. Ethan waited until everyone was inside before following. The cave swallowed them in darkness and bitter cold, but it was shelter. And more importantly, it was invisible from the air. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam revealed a narrow passage that opened into a larger chamber about 50 feet in.
"Perfect."
"Keep moving," he urged. "Get to the back." They stumbled through the dark, Kess leaning heavily on his shoulder. By the time they reached the main chamber, she was barely conscious. Ethan lowered her to the ground as gently as he could. Her bandages were soaked with blood again. The running had torn everything open. "Damn it," he muttered, breaking out his medical kit. Tess appeared beside him. "What can I do?"
"Light."
"I need light." The child assembled the small camping lantern from Ethan's pack with practiced efficiency. Warm glow filled the chamber. Ethan cut away the ruined bandages. The wound looked terrible, angry and bleeding, the stitches torn. He'd have to redo everything. "This is going to hurt," he warned Kess. She nodded weakly. "Do it." He worked as quickly as he could, cleaning and restitching while Kess bit down on leather to keep from screaming. The children watched with wide eyes. When he finished, Kess was shaking violently. Shock and pain. Ethan wrapped her in every blanket they had. "Rest," he ordered. "The hunters won't find us here. Not unless we give them a reason to look." He was less certain than he sounded. But the children needed to believe they were safe, at least for now. Ethan set up their small camp in the cave's main chamber. He rationed out food and water, made sure everyone ate despite their fear. Pip wouldn't let go of Kess, curling up against her side with desperate need. "We'll stay here tonight," Ethan said. "In the morning, we move deeper into the mountains." "Where?" Tess asked. "There's an old ranger station about 20 miles north. It's abandoned, but it'll have supplies. And it's far enough off the grid that no one will think to look there. 20 miles through winter mountains." Tess didn't sound doubtful, just calculating. "With Kess injured, we'll manage. We'll die." Ethan met the child's eyes. "Not if I have anything to say about it." That night, while the others slept, Ethan kept watch at the cave entrance. The hunters had stopped their immediate pursuit, probably waiting for daylight and better tracking conditions. But they'd be back. He heard movement behind him and turned to find Kess standing there, using the wall for support. "You should be resting," he said. "Couldn't sleep." She lowered herself carefully to sit beside him. Too much thinking. About. About how many people are going to die because of me. No one's died yet. I shot 2 of them, Ethan. You shot 3 more. They're not going to forgive that. I don't care about their forgiveness. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I've been running for so long, I forgot what it feels like to have someone stand with me instead of behind me. You're not running anymore. We are. Together. Why do you keep saying that? Because it's true. He looked at her directly. I told you before, you're not alone in this. Not anymore. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you saved 3 children who weren't yours. I know you walked through a blizzard with a gut wound rather than leave them behind. I know you're willing to die so they can live.
He paused.
That tells me everything I need to know. Kess's eyes glistened in the dim light. I don't deserve this. Don't deserve you. No one deserves anything. We just get what we get and decide what to do with it. He adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. You got me.
I got you.
Now we figure out how to make that mean something. She leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust that felt more intimate than anything physical could have been. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For making me believe we might actually survive this. Ethan wanted to promise her they would. Wanted to swear nothing would touch her or the children ever again. But he'd learned the hard way that promises you couldn't guarantee were worse than silence. So instead, he just said, get some rest. We've got a long walk tomorrow. She nodded and made her way back to the children, settling between them like a shield. Ethan returned his attention to the cave entrance and the dark woods beyond. Somewhere out there, hunters were planning, tracking, waiting. Let them wait. He wasn't running anymore either. They reached the ranger station on the 3rd day. It was exactly as Ethan remembered, a small log structure slowly being reclaimed by the forest but still standing. More importantly, still stocked with emergency supplies that rangers were required to maintain. Inside, he said, helping Kess up the steps. The children scrambled through the door. Ethan forced the lock with a pry bar, and they tumbled into dusty shelter. Kess collapsed into a chair, her face gray. 3 days of walking through snow had pushed her far past her limits. The wound had stopped bleeding but wasn't healing right. Ethan suspected infection was setting in again despite his best efforts. We need real medicine, Tess observed, their voice flat. I know. The nearest town is 10 miles. I know that too. Going into town meant exposure, meant questions, meant risk. But staying here and watching Kess die wasn't an option either. I'll go at first light, Ethan decided. You 3 stay here with Kess. There's food in the emergency cache. Water from the pump outside. Don't let anyone in except me. What if you don't come back? Pip asked, their small voice trembling. Ethan knelt down. I'll come back. I promise. It was the first promise he'd made that he wasn't certain he could keep. That night, while the children slept and Kess drifted in and out of consciousness, Ethan planned. He'd need to be careful in town. No one knew him there, which was good. But a stranger asking for medical supplies would draw attention. He'd have to risk it anyway. Dawn came cold and clear. Ethan left his rifle with Tess, teaching the child how to load and fire it properly, and took only a pistol hidden under his coat. Lock the door behind me, he instructed. Don't open it for anyone but me. If I'm not back by nightfall. You'll be back, Tess interrupted firmly. Ethan wanted to believe that certainty. The walk to town took 3 hours through snow that had drifted waist-deep in places. By the time he saw the first buildings, he was exhausted. The town was small, maybe 200 people, mostly human with a handful of other species. Ethan kept his head down and headed straight for the medical clinic. A middle-aged woman looked up from behind the counter as he entered. Help you. Need antibiotics. Strong ones. And wound care supplies. She studied him with the practiced eye of someone used to reading people. You hurt. A friend. Infected wound. This friend should come in. Doctor can.
Can't.
They're too sick to move. The woman's expression shifted to concern. How bad? Bad enough that I'm here instead of with them. She nodded slowly, making a decision. Wait here. She disappeared into the back. Ethan used the time to scan the street through the window. No hunters visible. No one watching the clinic.
Good.
The woman returned with a bag full of supplies. This should handle most infections. Instructions are inside. If your friend doesn't improve in 2 days, you bring them in. Understand? How much? 200 credits. Ethan counted out the money, most of what he had left. The woman took it and handed over the bag. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. There's people looking for someone. Outsiders. They've been asking around for a few days now. Ethan's blood went cold. What kind of people? The kind that carry weapons and don't smile. She glanced toward the window. They're offering a reward for information about an alien woman and 3 kids. Said they're fugitives. What did you tell them? Nothing. Because I haven't seen anyone matching that description. She met his eyes meaningfully. And I won't. But others in town might not be so forgetful. Ethan understood. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just take care of your friend. And maybe don't come back to town for a while. He left quickly, cutting through back alleys to avoid the main street. The walk back to the ranger station felt twice as long. Every shadow, a potential threat. When he finally pushed through the door, Tess had the rifle pointed at his chest. It's me, he said quickly. The child lowered the weapon, relief flooding their face. You came back. Told you I would. He immediately went to Kess. Her fever was worse. He administered the antibiotics, cleaned and redressed the wound, forced water down her throat. The town, she mumbled. Did anyone? We're safe. For now. He didn't mention the hunters asking questions. No point in adding to her fear. Over the next 2 days, the antibiotics worked their magic. Kess's fever broke. The wound finally started healing properly. Color returned to her face. But Ethan knew their time was running out. The hunters were in the area. It was only a matter of time before someone talked. On the 3rd day, his worst fears were confirmed. Tess was keeping watch when they spotted movement through the trees. Ethan grabbed his binoculars and his heart sank. 5 hunters, heading straight for the ranger station. They found us, Kess whispered. Everyone pack.
Now.
We're leaving. Where? Tess demanded. They'll track us. They'll. I know a place, Ethan interrupted. But we need to move fast. They fled out the back as the hunters approached the front. Ethan led them deeper into the mountains, following paths only he knew. Behind them, gunfire erupted as the hunters discovered the empty station. The chase had begun again.
The mountain pass was their only option. Ethan knew it was dangerous. Unstable snow conditions, narrow trails, deadly drops. But the hunters were closing in, and there was nowhere else to go. Stay close, he warned as they entered the pass. Single file. Step exactly where I step. The children obeyed. Kess, still weak but improving, brought up the rear. They were halfway through when Ethan heard it. A sound like distant thunder. He looked up, and his blood turned to ice. Avalanche. The hunters must have triggered it, either accidentally or deliberately to flush out their quarry. A wall of snow was cascading down the mountainside, heading straight for them. Run! Ethan screamed. They ran. Ethan grabbed Pip, Kess took Rin, Tess ran ahead. The roar of the avalanche grew deafening. They weren't going to make it. Ethan spotted a rocky outcrop jutting from the cliff face. There! Get behind the rocks. They dove for cover just as the avalanche hit. The world became white chaos. Snow hammered against the rocks. The noise was overwhelming. Ethan held Pip tight, shielding the small body with his own. Then silence. Ethan risked looking up. They were buried up to their waists in snow, but alive. The outcrop had protected them. Everyone okay? He called. The children responded. Kess responded. They'd survived. But then he heard shouting from below. The hunters. They'd survived too, and now they were climbing toward the pass. Ethan helped everyone dig out of the snow. They were trapped, hunters below, unstable snow above, nowhere to run. What do we do? Tess asked. Ethan looked at the snow still clinging to the mountainside, looked at the hunters approaching, made a decision. Get to that ledge, he pointed to a shelf of rock about 50 feet away, and don't stop running until you're safe. What are you going to do? What I have to. Now go. They ran. Ethan waited until they were clear, then he did something insane. He fired his rifle into the unstable snowpack above the hunters. Once, twice, 3 times. The mountain groaned. Then it moved. Ethan ran. Behind him, the second avalanche roared to life. Bigger than the first. He sprinted for the ledge, legs pumping, lungs burning. He dove for safety as the snow swept past, narrowly missing him. When the rumble faded, he looked back. The pass was completely blocked. Tons of snow had buried the trail. And somewhere beneath it, the hunters were trapped. Ethan didn't feel victorious. Just tired. Are they? Kess couldn't finish the question. I don't know. But they won't be following us anymore. They sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then Pip started crying. Not from fear, but from release of tension. We're safe, the child asked. For now, Ethan confirmed. For good, Kess corrected, pulling Pip close. Thanks to him. They camped on the ledge that night, huddled together for warmth. In the morning, they'd continue to the next valley, where Ethan knew of an old mining town that had been abandoned decades ago. But for tonight, they were alive. Together. That was enough. The mining town was exactly as Ethan remembered, empty but intact. They moved into the old foreman's house and began the slow process of turning it into a home. Winter gradually loosened its grip. Snow melted. Green appeared. The children, who had never known anything but running, started to relax. Tess helped Ethan repair the house. Rin explored the old mine shafts with fascinated curiosity. Pip learned to plant seeds in the small garden Kess started. And slowly, impossibly, they became a family. Months passed. Then a year. One spring morning, Ethan woke to find Kess sitting on the porch, watching the sunrise. Her wound had healed completely, leaving only a scar she wore without shame. He sat beside her. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. About how far we've come. How different things are. She looked at him. How different I am. You're not running anymore. No, I'm not. She took his hand, a gesture that had become natural over the months. Because of you. Because of us, he corrected. From inside the house, they heard the children laughing. Tess was teaching Pip to read. Rin was building something with scrap metal from the mine. They're happy, Kess observed. So are you. She smiled. Yes, I am. Ethan had thought he'd never feel whole again after losing his wife and daughter. Had thought that part of his life was over. But sitting here, with Kess beside him and the sound of children's laughter filling the house, he realized something. He'd found a new family. Not a replacement, nothing could replace what he'd lost. But something new. Something precious in its own way. Marry me, he said suddenly. Kess stared at him. What? Marry me. Make this official. Make us official. Ethan, I know it's complicated. I know there are still risks. But I don't care. I want to spend whatever time we have together. Really together. Tears filled her eyes. Yes. Yes. Yes, you stubborn human. Yes, I'll marry you. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony with just the children present. Tess officiated, having somehow found and memorized the legal words. Rin made rings from polished metal. Pip scattered wildflowers. It was perfect. That evening, as the sun set over the mountains, the 5 of them sat together on the porch. Not refugees anymore. Not survivors. A family. Ethan looked at Kess, his wife now, and the 3 children who'd somehow become his. We made it, he said quietly. Kess leaned her head on his shoulder. We did. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Another storm approaching. But for the first time in years, neither of them was afraid. They had shelter. They had each other. They had home.